Hello, everyone, and to our Sky Fantasy Football listeners, a very happy new year. Before we get into the podcast, just a quick note to say that since recording this morning, we've had official confirmation of the postponement of tomorrow evening's Arsenal and Liverpool Carabao Cup tie. It's also been confirmed that the first leg will now be played at Anfield next Thursday, as was originally scheduled, and the second leg will now be played on Thursday, January the 20th. At the Emirates. That's going to mean no midweek Premier League fixture for Arsenal and Liverpool in that midweek. Also means highly likely that Arsenal's clash with Burnley, currently scheduled for Saturday, January 22nd, will move to Sunday, January 23rd. I do speak about this as a possibility during the podcast. Enjoy the show, everyone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet SkyFF, the world where everything revolves around £50,000. My name's Such.
And my name is James.
And we're back again. It's a nice little gap that we have this weekend with no fixtures, and we can kind of recalibrate where we are. I think, James, is what I like to think about is, all right, hang on, in the middle of making decisions that are day to day, where it's like, okay, if this happens and that happens and this happens and that happens, and today if this happens and tomorrow I'm going to do this, we've got a longer period of time where you can just start thinking about your future strategy a little bit, I would say.
Well done for confusing everyone in the first 60 seconds of the podcast. That takes some doing. How was your game week, sir?
There's no games. My game week rank, let's have a look. I got it up in front of me, was 7,897. So good. And I jumped from 8,300 odd. So I'd gone from 10 and a bit to 8 and a bit to now 6.
So John Shaw, he's coming for you.
Yeah. Well,
how many points?
1573. I'm about 130, 140.
No. How many points at the weekend?
Oh, for the week, I got 62 points.
Decent.
I made one transfer. I sold Phil Foden on Saturday morning for Jarrod Bowen. When obviously it was confirmed that he wasn't going to be on the team. Really disappointed with that because I bought Foden on Wednesday when they won 1-0. Remind me who they played. Brentford, yeah. Obviously he scored, got man of the match. So he outscored Cancelo just a little, not enough that really would have justified the transfer. But if I'd have gone with him again and again, then over time it might have worked out okay, especially because Cancelo obviously didn't get a clean sheet at the weekend. Bowen only picked up a tackle tier. His assist that was given in FPL wasn't given in Sky. So that was a bit of a disappointment, but also look, Foden didn't even have a game. So either way, I'm quitting. Not or would even be close to another fixture, even if he's back. So that was fine. Decent return from Antonio, 9 points, who's done all right for me last couple of games. I captained Salah on the Sunday ahead of some people went with Rafinha or others. That was 20 points, so that was pretty decent. Cancelo, 8 points as captain, so 4 doubled up on the Saturday. Christian Norgard.
He's great, isn't he?
Mr. 5-pointer.
It's great. Honestly, every game, nearly.
Yeah. It's like the only way I could describe him is like a soft, fluffy comfort blanket where you just look at him and you'll be good for 4 or 5 points each and every week that I've had him. There's only one that obviously the week that he was suspended. Other than that, since I've owned him for 6 weeks, there's only 1 week where he hasn't got me more than 4 points. And Robert Sanchez, goalkeeping penalty save of the season.
I absolutely, I have had it go for me in the past, but I absolutely detest that rule. It's shit.
What James talking about, obviously Sanchez didn't save the penalty. Calvert-Lewin missed the penalty, but Sanchez in Sky still picked up penalty save points. 8 points from Sanchez, which I'll be honest with you, I was very close to moving to David De Gea last Thursday for the United game because I would have got a fixture gain on Sanchez. But Sanchez was my only coverage for the Brighton Everton game, which is a single game day. So I left him in there.
Brighton Everton?
Is it Brighton Everton? Who's Brighton's single game day?
Brighton just played Everton. Palace, you mean? Friday the 14th.
Oh, sorry, Brighton Palace. That's
you haven't
exactly
got Gallagher, have you?
No, I moved him on,
That's
didn't I,
fine.
when he had COVID.
I
Game.
think you made the right choice there then.
Yeah. So yeah, Sanchez is sticking around for me, and he obviously came in with an 8-pointer. So I'm very happy with that 62. My goal prior to probably about 3 weeks ago, I said on the pod, was inside the top 5K by Overhaul. We've kind of got 2 rounds of fixtures between now and Overhaul, plus any rearrangements. I think that's more than doable, more than comfortable. And I look at my squad now, James, and there's no real problems there. Sanchez, White, Rudiger, Cancelo, Rafinha, Ward-Prowse, Norgard, Bowen, Salah, Ronaldo, Antonio. Salah's the only one, but I've got 26 transfers, mate. I just move Salah onto whoever the hell I want and pick it up from there. So probably I'm thinking Trent at the moment, but I'll see.
I think it still might end up being what I discussed last week about possible Watford player might still be.
Well, yeah,
what's possibly on the agenda for you.
I don't have coverage for that day, to be clear. So Norwich, Watford, I need something. So it could ever even be that, and I'll have more money in the bank than on the pitch almost. I'll end up with 10 million in the bank, mate.
A lot of people who have still got Salah are going to go into the Overhaul with money in the bank. I mean, you might make the decision that Salah to Dennis is the right transfer for you now that it looks like Emmanuel Dennis is not going to AFCON, although it's worth saying he came off at half time against Tottenham at the weekend, and we don't know if there's an issue there or not. We've not heard anything at this stage. I'm sure we will do by the time Saturday the 15th comes round, when Watford go to Newcastle. And I mentioned that because I think I was suspicious that obviously one of Burnley, Watford, or Everton, Leicester, or both was going to take place on Tuesday 11th. Obviously, we've got the Everton, Leicester fixture and the Southampton, Brentford fixture, but I still really think Burnley versus Watford is now going to go on Tuesday the 18th, and it might be on its own. And that would mean as well that you potentially suddenly got 2 single game days Watford in a row, because we've obviously got Norwich on the Friday the 21st, which I think is probably going to stay there now. So, I mean, if it's 2 single game days, we've had this situation loads of times, then I think you do go and pump one, particularly in the case people saying, oh, I don't know if I want one, who will you sell? Well, the one obvious one, particularly if you're sitting there with 4 in midfield, will be Gallagher.
Yep.
After he's played Brighton on Friday the 14th, if you've got 4 in midfield, Gallagher to King or Dennis on Saturday the 15th, you got Newcastle away, Burnley away, captain possibly, Norwich at home, captain. The one Gallagher game you miss is Liverpool at home on the final day, Sunday the 23rd, because I don't think, obviously, if Watford play Burnley, Watford won't play Palace, and therefore Gallagher won't have the extra fixture. So it becomes effective 4 for 1, possibly effective 5 for 1. Yeah, I think it becomes worth it to Watford punt it at that point.
How was your week?
Oh shit, mate! As it was for many, I suspect, because I didn't lose much ground, to be honest. I didn't sell Salah, but didn't captain him. Captain Rafinha. Captain Ronaldo, obviously, last Thursday, which was quite nice, although I suspect many others did as well. Obviously, captained him Monday night against Wolves, nothing. Rafinha, as I said, Sunday. I captained Cancelo on Saturday.
3 captaincy blanks in a weekend is always irritating.
And nothing to go with it, basically, mate. I mean,
nothing.
Cancelo got me 8 points from the captaincy on Saturday. He had a pass tier. De Gea got me 5 points Monday night against Wolves. I mean, Wolves had 15 shots in the first half. So, I mean, if I'd known that in hindsight, I probably would have captained him. Jared Bowen got me a tackle tier. Bernardo Silva got me the assist at Arsenal, but also a yellow card. I made 1 transfer. I bought Dominic Calvert-Lewin on Sunday. Right decision. No complaints.
Right decision, disappointing outcome.
But I didn't buy him for Mo Salah, as what a lot of people did, because it's still Mo Salah. I didn't like the exact swap on the day. And I agree that obviously there's a big gain for Calvert-Lewin against Salah now he's going to AFCON. But we was trying to sell a Man City player. I couldn't afford to go Silva to Calvert-Lewin, so reluctantly binned Laporte. I very nearly binned Cancelo. The reason I decided to keep Cancelo is I think I may still end up captaining Cancelo on Saturday the 22nd when City go to Southampton. It's possible. But the City players are expendable for me. So I went to Calvert-Lewin. I didn't captain him. I still stayed with Rafinha as captain. Obviously, look, if he scores the penalty, great, we're quids in straight away. But it was a case of looking at it going, I had no coverage for Tuesday the 11th. So it was obviously going by on the Sunday. As it is, there is a doubt around Calvert-Lewin for Saturday's FA Cup tie at Hull. Now, in all honesty, I wouldn't have expected him to play that fixture anyway, having just come back from injury and the fact that they're them playing Leicester on the Tuesday. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But obviously, if he's a no-show, I'm left with nothing again for Tuesday 11th. And there will be people who, for whatever reason, are currently looking at it. Everton versus Leicester, Southampton versus Brentford, no coverage. You don't have a problem because you've got Ward-Prowse.
And Norgard.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you've also obviously got Norgard
so I got
as a backup
on that day.
Anyone who's got Norgard, and that's all you've got, I'd just captain him.
I would
at
as
this
well.
Stage
yeah.
now.
Yep.
Forget about it. Unless if you're in a position that you've still got Salah, like I do, and others possibly do as well, then I would look to move that on. And I think the two for me would probably be Harvey Barnes or James Maddison, depending on the lineup, or Yuri Tielemans, actually. Any one of them three rather than Damari Gray. I really think Leicester and Tottenham will go into the following week. It could be a standalone on Thursday 20th, and we should know by the time next Tuesday's fixtures come around. I think I'm expecting fixtures to be announced either this Friday or next Monday. That would be my expectation. I don't think it's going to go anything beyond that. So Leicester Tottenham, if it lands on Thursday 20th, could be a standalone. So then suddenly you're looking at two captaincies of Leicester. They've got Burnley in the middle and they finish with Brighton. So it's not a bad set of four fixtures either. Obviously, Leicester have no Vardy, no Iheanacho, no Daka, which is why I think Harvey Barnes is possibly a really interesting one because he could play OOP. We talk about that on tomorrow's Clash to Correspondents with our Leicester correspondent, Aaron Lager, about that prospect. We also spoke about Ademola Lookman, could play that position, but wouldn't fancy under this format. And same with
Barnes.
Same with Jose Perez. You don't?
No, mate. Did you see how glazed his eyes were in that picture at the darts? I think he's still hungover, mate.
So same applies to James Maddison, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly that.
So it could well be that it becomes Tielemans by default. Now, the beauty of Tielemans, the only thing I think about it is such a short-term interest. I am tempted to go with, I mean, they're all differentials.
Higher ceiling.
A little bit. A little bit. Whereas Tielemans, will probably be 20 points or so across the 4 games. Whereas a Maddison could drop a 30-point captaincy. Does that make sense? That's kind of how it feels.
Yeah.
So I need to weigh that sort of thing up in my mind. I did suffer regret of buying James Maddison towards the end of last season, where I think quite a few people did, and it was 2-2, 2-2, 2-2. It was like that all the way through. So I'll give that some thought, and I generally won't make a final decision on that till Tuesday the 11th. If Calvert-Lewin is still in the team, then I'll just leave it on DCL, leave that be, forget about it. Wednesday 12th, we've now got West Ham Norwich. You've got Antonio and Bowen?
Correct.
So what do you do?
Antonio.
Why?
Shot tier.
Bowen's capable of it.
Bowen is, yeah, no doubt about it. But I just fancy Antonio in this fixture. I really do fancy Antonio in this fixture.
Yeah, I can completely get that. I mean, one thing to bear in mind is Bowen's ownership has shot right up. It's 50% owned now, whereas Antonio's only 20% owned. Now, I imagine that both of those players will probably increase in ownership on Wednesday the 12th. There's a chance people will go for the double up because of the fixture, right? Fucking that's Norwich as well, right? Let's go for it. No, it's worth saying West Ham are one of those teams that definitely won't play in that period of the 18th to the 20th as it stands, because West Ham have got no games to rearrange. So effectively, if you think about it, it's no different to the game being on the Friday night at the start of the weekend. There isn't actually proper game. The gain, obviously, is the fact that they'll play Norwich. And then it could give people, obviously, captaincy coverage for Sunday the 16th as well, if you haven't got any there. It's Tottenham versus Arsenal, Liverpool versus Brentford. A lot of people may only have Salah, for example. West Ham played Leeds. So, I mean, I've just got Bowen. That's the way I intend for it to stay. And I'm probably going to captain him Wednesday the 12th and Sunday the 16th. if Bowen wasn't in the team, I think, I would buy Antonio. We'd probably have to and just go, as a captaincy option, this could be too good to ignore.
Bowen hasn't picked up a shot tier for 10 games, mate.
Is that right?
Since the end of December. He got a tackle tier. Other than that, I'm just flicking through. He hasn't picked up any tier points, not just
tackle tier. You had tackle tier at the weekend, mate.
At the weekend, yeah. Other than that, he hasn't picked up any tier points since Aston Villa on the 31st of December, which is quite surprising, really.
I mean, on that basis, then that does lead me to think that Antonio would probably be the better choice. We obviously we are going to record again before that game comes around, so we will discuss it a little bit more next Wednesday. So, I mean, plan moves for me at the moment. If Calvert-Lewin plays against Leicester, nothing for the Tuesday, Wednesday fixtures. Then it's Salah to King or Dennis on Saturday the 15th. Obviously, if I do need the Leicester coverage, Tuesday 11th, it's Salah to one of them Leicester players. Then it would be Gallagher to King or Dennis on Saturday the 15th. That's the current plan. And barring a real obvious injury, that's me done.
Any thoughts around, you mentioned obviously very briefly, Burnley versus Watford might be on the 18th. Now that 18th, 19th, 20th period could cause an issue for some people. And we will we've got a whole pod next week. And after that pod, we've got a round of fixtures at the weekend and those midweek fixtures. So if there's going to be games on those 3 days, by the time we record next week, we will know about it. And other than buying a coverage for next Tuesday or Wednesday, there's no other need to make any transfers before then anyway. So fingers crossed, most listeners aren't in a situation where they need to panic strategize, if that's such a thing.
No, but then you need to think a little bit about what exactly that. So, moving Salah to a midfielder will be quite important for me to allow to move off of Gallagher on Saturday the 15th, if that's the way I need to go, for example. So, although I've got 4 in midfield, so I don't actually need to go that way. I could consider another forward, but there's nothing from Everton, Leicester, Southampton or Brentford I'd be considering as a forward. Southampton are unlikely to have an extra fixture. Brentford could, but that extra fixture would be Manchester United. Leicester got no forwards available. I would not be ploughing into a position where I've got Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin sitting in my team with our toilet Everton are. But yeah, for those who've only got 3 in midfield, consider plan A before plan B. Might mean going forward to midfielder, midfielder back to forward. It might mean that sort of kind of flexibility. So you do need to consider what you're doing as backup plans for Tuesday 11th. But yeah, you're quite right to say by next Wednesday we should be in a position where we know we can't be in a position come next Wednesday. Exactly, we can't be.
Yeah.
So I think that there's some caution things to say if we get a fixture announcement on Friday or even before that. I mean, it's not unthinkable we could get a fixture announcement today. There are some cautious notes on it. Obviously, Liverpool have submitted a request to postpone the game against. I was going to ask you about that.
We don't know what's going to happen with that, but if they've submitted a request, they must be fairly confident that
it's an unusual step as well that it's come out and been said publicly. So normally you hear from one of the journalists, it's in a no or request been submitted. Liverpool have openly come out and said request is in. EFL have openly come out and said, because obviously it's their jurisdiction, their competition, have openly come out and said we've received, we're assessing.
Where do they send it? To Sean Dyche?
Sean Dyche? Why Sean Dyche?
Because obviously it's Burnley who make all the decisions at the Premier League, isn't it?
Says who? Who said
Klopp likes to blame Burnley for
I see where you're going.
Him not getting his way.
Yeah, you're right. Or not Neil Warnock. Who's fucking Chris Wilder is the other one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It'll be Chris Wilder's fault or Sean Dyche's fault. Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like Arsenal-Liverpool tomorrow night's probably not going to happen. Now, what does that mean? There's a couple of solutions. The one that's being muted by, I have to say, not people in the know, is that could the game become one leg? Now, that doesn't seem right. How can Arsenal potentially lose the home advantage? Could be played on a neutral event. It's too messy.
No.
So I think the most likely is that the game will happen next Thursday, but it might, as in what would have been the second leg, will now be the first leg. Whether Liverpool become the home team, I'm not sure, because you have to think of Arsenal fans have booked their travel, and you have to say Arsenal have been inconvenienced So there might be a solution where Arsenal now have the second leg at home as a possibility. But I think the first leg will now probably happen next Thursday the 13th. And you would think the second leg is now going to go into that open midweek, which would mean no extra fixture for Arsenal, Liverpool. Now, I think it could end up happening on Thursday the 20th. There is a knock-on of that with a potential movement of a Premier League fixture before Overhaul, which would mean Arsenal-Burnley, which is currently Saturday the 22nd, moving to Sunday the 23rd. Now, currently, interestingly, the captaincy options for Sunday the 23rd don't look spectacular. You've got Chelsea against Tottenham, Palace against Liverpool. Now, for those who've already got like a Trent and Jota, that's obviously fine. And the other fixture is Leicester against Brighton. Now, again, to bring potential Leicester players back into the conversation. But I tell you what, if Arsenal Burnley moves there, I might end up captaining Gabriel that day. So that's something to think about. And it's worth saying with Gabriel, although he was sent off against Manchester City, he won't be suspended for the Premier League game against Tottenham unless there's some weird freakish turn of events and Arsenal don't play a football match between now and the Tottenham match on Sunday the 16th. So Sunday 23rd might have an Arsenal option. Suddenly looks like the best captaincy option possibly. So like if you've got your Sakas, maybe Smith-Rowe, I know a couple of gambled, Martinelli, just be a little bit conscious of that. There is a possibility that Arsenal-Burnley fixture might move, I think. It could, of course, go into Wednesday the 19th, which would be the sensible decision for Arsenal-Liverpool. But the TV companies are likely to have their say in terms of, and this is part why we've got a delay of the announcement. I'm also concerned, as I said to you previously, Serge, any FA Cup game that gets postponed this weekend, I think could also land in that midweek. I spoke on Monday's podcast about, heaven forbid, if Leicester and Watford got postponed in the FA Cup this weekend, like it will fuck everything from a scheduling perspective. It looks like the games that have previously been selected for television are probably going to take priority in this period, Tuesday to Thursday. They're the only two games that are selectable for TV, really, that can land on Tuesday the 18th. There is a third. Are Burnley against Watford. I think it's almost definitely going to go there. Manchester United against Brighton, or Brighton against Chelsea, which is currently an unselected television match. But it was obviously due to be played in match week 24, is going to be postponed because of Chelsea's involvement in the Club World Cup. So I'm not certain that Burnley Watford is going to be a standalone. I think it could have Brighton in there on the same night, which might be useful for you as a Sanchez owner and some others such. But the chances are you'll also have a Manchester United or a Chelsea coverage if it lands that way. So Ronaldo or De Gea, Antonio, Rudiger, whatever. Most people are still going to have something probably. Although my suspicion was prior to the Arsenal-Liverpool potential postponement that Brighton-Chelsea might actually land on Thursday the 20th. There is a theory knocking about that the three postponed Amazon games will land on Wednesday the 19th. Those three fixtures are Arsenal versus Wolves, Everton versus Newcastle, and Leeds versus Aston Villa. Now, obviously, if Arsenal-Liverpool ends up going into that midweek, it won't be Arsenal v Wolves. So Wednesday the 19th could be Everton versus Newcastle, Leeds versus Villa. Would that give you a problem, Serge? Have you got Rafinha?
Everton versus, yeah, he's sitting there, although not filling me with the most amount of joy.
No, I get that.
So yeah, I'd probably keep him there. Everton, Leeds. Did you say?
So Everton, Newcastle, Leeds v Villa.
Yeah, it would only be Rafinha.
But that's all right. That's what you've got. That's what you've got, isn't it?
But I'd hold it. Yeah. At that point, I mean,
it's another one possibly to add potentially to the Everton scenario. And again, I think, look, by the time Everton Leicester kicks off next Tuesday, surely we're going to know where we're at, but bear that in mind. There are other fixtures that can slot in there. I got a tip off a couple of weeks ago that BT were planning to show Leicester versus Tottenham on that night, but I am not convinced that BT is going to clash with the Amazon games. I'm a little bit cautious of that. I think it makes sense for Leicester versus Tottenham to go on the Thursday, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Leicester v Tottenham on a Thursday makes so much sense to me. Then the BT pick up Brighton and Chelsea and show those two games that night. There was a possibility of Chelsea playing Arsenal that night if the Arsenal-Burnley fixture moved, or Arsenal versus Liverpool, but we don't know where we stand with that at the moment. I think what you need to do is work out as your plan A, what are you doing next Tuesday the 11th? with Everton, Leicester, particularly the two. I wouldn't buy Southampton or Brentford as no. I would still go into an Everton or a Leicester option.
And that's a perfect segue, James, into some of the questions that we've had on Twitter, because I've just had a notification pop up on Twitter, mate. Reality star who made £38,000 a week selling farts in a jar has been hospitalised. And I really need to go.
I actually saw this.
I need to read this article. So
yeah,
let's read these Twitter questions as quickly as we can, because
shall I spoil it for you? So
no, I just want to know how much one of our listeners will pay for me to fart in a jar and send it to him. 50p, pound.
Do you know how much they were paying this girl?
Well, she says £38,000 a week is what it says in the headline.
Yeah, she was getting like 750 quid per fart in a jar. Anyway, man, it's amazing.
Twitter questions. I love Twitter.
But the poor girl ended up getting rushed to hospital. She thought she was having a stroke or an heart attack. It was
because so much.
The weight, she was eating stuff that was on her diet that was obviously making her fart, and the doctor went. She didn't tell the doctor why she'd end up going to hospital. The doctor said, listen, this is a really bad diet. You need to change it. So now, instead, she's selling like drawings of her fart jars instead of the farts in the jar. You couldn't make this up. I saw it was on the Metro. Is that when you saw it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can take our time with the questions now.
Farts in the jar. We really thought you were going to say, Suj. I've just seen on Twitter an announcement that Leicester versus Tottenham will be. You're useful. Cheers.
Nah. It's not. It's all about fighting in a jar. So FPL Janino, Chris says, best captaincy option for Tuesday, the 11th. Well, as James mentioned there, I suppose Leicester versus Everton is the key fixture, especially if they double again the week after, or play again, at least I should say, the week after. So you've got your safe option, Tielemans. You've got your riskier option in Maddison and DCL, Barnes, and DCL potentially.
I was surprised that more people, it's good to do the hindsight there. I was surprised that more people didn't gamble on Calvert-Lewin actually on Sunday, with potential effectiveness of 5/2 with some captaincy potentially in there as well. And 9.5% of the top 1,000 have got Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I presume all of them bought him on Sunday, of which I was one of them, except I'm not in the top 1,000, by the way, at the moment. I think Calvert-Lewin will be the best option, actually. You have to remember Leicester, as well as the attacking issues at the moment, have got big problems defensively. The only fit defenders they've got at the moment, as it stands right now, is Vestergaard, Castagne, and Luke Thomas.
Okay.
And Diddy's obviously been covering at centre-back. He's going to AFCON. So they really need to get something back. It might be that they're forced into going sort of Albrighton at right back with Castagne at centre back against Vestergaard. Now, Vestergaard's obviously very good in the air. I'd fancy, if Calvert-Lewin's fit, I actually fancy him to potentially be the best option. DCL. But I think he might be. I wouldn't, if you've got coverage, I wouldn't buy him. Like anything you've got, honestly, if you're sitting there with just Norgard, I'd potentially just leave it. It obviously depends how the fixtures fall. But I think if you've got Salah, then ideally that's the first place to go, is that night. I take your pick from those three Leicester midfielders. I said is obviously the alternative option. I wouldn't look at anything else from Everton. I wouldn't look at like Michael Keane defensively. Or
forget about
that. There should be, at this stage now, there probably isn't anyone that needs to change goalkeeper. Now, have a quick look at Mendy's ownership search at Chelsea. See if anyone's still got him. Because obviously you could go Pickford or Schmeichel, obviously.
In the top 1K, he's down to 8.6%, mate, and that's going to be a reasonable.
Still 8%,
and I'm surprised. 19.29 overall.
So if we look at it like that, Mendy and Calvert-Lewin's ownership, the top 1,000 is basically the same at the moment. So there will be Mendy owners looking to move on, and I think I would go. I'd go Schmeichel over Pickford.
Oh, okay.
I tell you why, Schmeichel. We've spoken about this before. It's like save tier nearly every game.
Yeah.
So, and particularly if that landed, say, Calvert-Lewin's not in the Everton team, then you'd fancy there's, even with their defensive problems, you'd fancy there's a possibility they're keeping a clean sheet that night. Then potentially looking at a 22-pointer if the save tier's there as well. So I'd have slight favouritism, possibly Schmeichel over Pickford. That said, obviously looking at Everton's fixtures afterwards, if the Newcastle game goes on that Wednesday night, it will give you captaincy coverage for that. And they've got Norwich in between as well. So actually scrap that, go Pickford. But the captaincy option on the night might be Schmeichel, might be the better of the two.
Yeah. A few more questions, James, and I will ask, this is a bit of a funny request to the listeners in terms of Twitter questions. Sometimes it's difficult to give a good answer without context. So sometimes a little bit of context would be useful when you're asking about specific players, like just don't need to captain him or do need him for captaincy. For example, we've got here FPL Hercules is saying DCL or Antonio up to Overhaul. Well, DCL probably has got more fixtures, but then if you're going to captain Antonio against Norwich and you've got coverage for the previous day, then does he have more fixtures because of the effect doubling? So just understanding what the rest of your squad is, your captaincy needs sometimes can help a little bit. So DCL or Antonio up to Overhaul. Let's assume no captaincy, all things equal.
Who are you captaining Saturday the 15th as it stands? With no transfers.
You are asking me
so the fixtures are Villa versus United, Burnley versus Leicester, City versus Chelsea is the early kickoff. You got Newcastle against Watford, Norwich against Everton, and Wolves versus Southampton. There's 12 teams to choose from, so everyone should have something.
Probably Ronaldo, as it stands, probably Ronaldo or Cancelo. Yeah.
It might be Calvert-Lewin, mate.
Yeah, but if I own Dennis by then, because I've bought him away at Newcastle, I don't even mind that.
Yeah, possibly. That'd possibly be really punty. But it might be that. You get to Saturday the 15th, you look at it, particularly we get a look at, obviously, Everton and Norwich beforehand as well. If you still feel the same as you feel about Norwich, which I suspect most people might do, unfortunately, and if Calvert-Lewin impresses against Leicester, Calvert-Lewin at Norwich, Saturday 15th, great differential captain. And at the moment, that might be what I do. So that can influence the decisions. But if you're then going Calvert-Lewin captain Tuesday, Saturday, and maybe the Wednesday afterwards, I can't believe I'm even saying this out loud. I know it's going to come back and bite. Then the answer's Calvert-Lewin, isn't it, rather than Antonio? But then you might need the coverage for Sunday 16th, West Ham versus Leeds.
James, FPL Hercules also asks Ronaldo or Kane up until Overhaul. Is that the equivalent of asking fart in a jar or picture of a fart in a jar up until Overhaul?
This podcast is definitely getting called fart in a jar.
It's the difference between
I think
shit versus shite.
In the case of
if you own one or the other, just stick with what you own, surely.
Oh yeah, like I wouldn't move from Ronaldo to Kane, or even vice versa. There would maybe be a case to move vice versa if United land with that Tuesday the 18th date against Brighton, for example. You might think, okay, yeah, that's reasonable to make the move, but there's probably other ways of doing it. I definitely would not be investing in Harry Kane at this point. I mean, Thursday the 20th, it could be a single for Tottenham as well. I think I'd rather buy Son at this stage, to be honest, and save the money. If it's a choice between the two, for me, probably still Ronaldo. But you'll by the time the decision comes around, you'll have a clearer picture. Right now, he's probably buying neither. I mean, to be honest, in the case of Ronaldo, if you haven't bought yet, with all them single game days gone, I don't know what's going to make you think to buy him now. You've obviously chosen to go against, I would guess. So it's probably neither.
FPL Eze wants to know what to do with Chelsea assets. Currently own Rudiger and Alonso. I only own Rudiger. They've got tough fixtures and blanks coming up. Is it worth a transfer out, James?
Again, Alonso's binnable, I think. In the case of Rudiger, I would say he's possible captaincy coverage for Sunday 23rd, depending on what you've got. So therefore, I think probably just leave him in there. Plus, as we said, they could have probably Brighton on Tuesday the 18th or Thursday the 20th, and it might stand out as the best option, depending on how it falls. So Alonso binnable, I think I've learned that even though it's an amazing price, 7.9, it's not really shown it as a Sky asset. Rudiger, I'd keep. Okay, unless you're so happy with the other 9 or 10 in your team.
Yeah, I'm going to keep Rudiger. I don't think it's worth a transfer out, to be honest with you. And he could easily pick up a 6, 8, 10 pointer any
Got
time.
to think as well, like say in the case of like Chelsea, where they've got that Sunday the 23rd fixture, looking at them games now, as I said, Chelsea, Tottenham, Palace against Liverpool, and Leicester against Brighton. Yes, there could be Arsenal, Burnley as well, possibly on that date. But I mean, from those 6 teams, has anyone got amazing coverage at the moment? I mean, what would you rather do? Would you rather captain Rudiger at home to Tottenham or Gallagher against Liverpool?
Definitely Rudiger.
And in any case, like I said, it would make more sense to bin Gallagher after they play Brighton on Friday the 14th.
Yeah, because of the game. Yeah. Agreed. FPL Dave says, how many transfers does the winner of Sky have left, in your opinion, right now?
Who asked this question?
I don't know, FPL Dave, but I'm going to slide into Simple Goals DMs and find out how many he's got left.
I think he's joint top, isn't he, Dave? I want to say at the moment.
Yeah, joint top.
The winner of Sky has 20 transfers left.
Mm-hmm. 20 or more, because I've got 26, James. So, 20 or more.
Well, I've got more than 20 as well, and it ain't going to be me, mate.
Oh, dear. And also, Tom Hartnell wants to know, what's the lowest transfer account you would consider acceptable to make a transfer to cover a single game day before Overhaul? I hope that question completely makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It depends what you're doing it for, right?
Which single game day, right?
So, I mean, at the end of the day, like Antonio against Norwich, for example, if you haven't got any coverage of it, it looks like a good big possibility, right? Particularly if you're then going to captain him on Sunday 16th as well. It's still worth it.
Okay, we've had a number of questions here that we're going to just gloss past, which is literally Salah's off, who should I buy? And all of the names that have been mentioned are the ones that we talked about: DCL, Tielemans, Maddison, King,
Antonio,
Dennis.
Bowen.
Shout out to FPL Hambo for chucking in Pookie or Gilmore from Norwich.
Oh my God.
He did add an exclamation mark behind those names. So other than those two, most of the other names that have been mentioned are all viable. It just depends on your circumstances specifically.
Yeah, just to kind of repeat a message I said on Monday, which was FPL related, but the same applies. You do not have to spend the money. Don't be sitting there thinking, I've got to buy De Bruyne or Fernandes or Kane or Ronaldo because I've got the money. You do not have to do that. Do not feel you have to spend the money. If it means that you get to Overhaul and you've got 4 million in the bank, you get to Overhaul, you've got 4 million in the bank. That's what it is.
This is a very good question coming in from Kermit, the winger. Is there any chance that Salah is back before Overhaul, with Egypt just bombing out completely of the AFCON? I would only add the second part to that is, does it even matter? Like, if he's back for one game, the fixture gains on other players that there could be must be far greater than just potentially that one game.
Okay. The
Come into your thoughts at all?
No, but you got to consider here as well is, so we play Palace on Sunday 23rd. It's the last game day as it stands, and I must reiterate that, as it stands ahead of Overhaul. The African Cup of Nations starts on the 9th, and the format of the tournament is now the same as the European Championships. It's 24 teams, only 8 teams get eliminated in the group stage. Egypt are not going to get eliminated in the group stage. Even if they did, you still probably wouldn't play against Palace on the 23rd, because I think the group stage is like 2 weeks. So it takes you up from like Sunday the 9th up to Sunday 23rd. He's still not going to play. However, I'm a little bit suspicious. I've just seen notifications as well that Liverpool's assistant manager is out of the game tomorrow night as well, and Klopp is still isolating. They don't even have anyone to manage the team. It really looks like that game's not going to happen.
What are you doing tomorrow night anyway? Yeah, you're free. I'm free. Let's get down to Liverpool. Let's manage them. Come on, boys.
I do not need to get embarrassed at the Emirates, mate. I've suffered that. I've suffered that once already this season watching my team. I don't need to put on a fucking red shite shirt and feel more embarrassment. The period after match day 23, so after Sunday 23rd, is designated for world internationals. No European internationals, but like catch up on Copa America fixtures. Obviously, AFCON will still be going on, and some Asian qualifiers as well. Mm-hmm. But there is a little bit of an unknown in terms of, can games go in there? I mean, if you've got 2 teams, let's just say hypothetically, who have Norwich still got to play? Leicester. That's a really bad example, actually, James. Let's take an example of, I don't know, Leeds and Villa. Right, I think Bertrand Traore and Trezeguet have gone to AFCON. Could Leeds and Villa rather than being next Wednesday or Wednesday the 19th, rather, could that be in the midweek after the 23rd? There isn't actually a lot of reason to say, no, it can't. And it's like that for a lot of clubs as well. So, for example, could Liverpool play Arsenal in the first leg next Thursday as scheduled, still play perhaps Leeds or Brentford on Wednesday the 19th, which would suddenly make Liverpool very interesting again to buy, particularly because you'd have 3-for-1 with perhaps effective captaincies if you buy when they play Brentford on Sunday the 16th. Could they play the second leg against Arsenal in that midweek afterwards? Or could they play Leeds in that midweek afterwards? Now, I think Liverpool's case is really special because of Salah, Mane. They don't want the games anyway. It's fairly clear. That's not why these Arsenal games getting postponed. I'm already tired of people writing on the Bird app, oh, Liverpool are trying to get every game postponed for the next 3 weeks. No, that's not the case. They've generally got a COVID outbreak. But in theory, something can go in there. And that's the real unknown. We don't factually know that nothing can definitely go into that midweek, which is scheduled to be after Overhaul, or even the weekend after. The weekend of Saturday the 29th and Sunday the 30th is all booked out for overseas internationals. Now, take a case like Tottenham. We've obviously got a high proportion of South American players like Romero, Davinson Sanchez, Giovanni Lo Celso. Also got Heung-min Son might go and play for South Korea as well. Now, Tottenham wouldn't want a fixture there, and it would feel a little bit unfair. Actually, same would probably apply to putting a Liverpool fixture in that period. But for certain other teams, you never know. And it might suddenly be that there's more fixtures. I don't think that's going to happen, but we should be conscious to say it's not 100% definite that no fixtures will go there.
Yeah. Dave Simple Goal, sitting top of the tree, he's got a couple of questions. How important do you think it is to cover the single game days? I know we don't have fixtures. I think that it's probably, you should cover them off. We talked about this last week because inevitably, depending on the teams that we talked about, there is a small fixture advantage that you can gain on most.
Yeah.
So you're not only covering off the single game days, but you generally are getting an extra game out of it as well. So I think for most, there's a reasonable enough option to make it worth picking up.
I also don't think it's going to throw people that badly. The real one, as we said, is kind of if Burnley Watford's on the 18th and it's the only game, then obviously there's a 25% that got Dennis or so. There's a small percentage on King. So like a third of the top 1,000 won't need to do anything, but 2/3 of the rest are going to have a decision to make whether to bother with Watford or not. Now, as I've said, with that Friday night fixture against Norwich as well, you can go and buy on the Newcastle when you're effective like 6 for 2 with the 2 captaincies or something. And it's worth it. 5 for 2, sorry. It's worth it.
Yeah.
So Dave, in most cases, it's still going to be worth it. Like Brighton Chelsea's a single game day. Like I said, most of us are going to have something.
Yeah.
Leicester Tottenham might be an awkward one. But then again, if you know it and you haven't got any Leicester Tottenham, and we know next Tuesday that Leicester Tottenham's going to be a single game day on Thursday the 20th, surely you buy a Leicester player on Tuesday 11th. Surely you do.
Correct. Dave also says, and we've talked about this, but we'll wrap it up in a neat bow. Do you think that a 3-for-1 on Gallagher is worth it in this imaginary scenario? He can't get a forward. He can only get a midfielder or a defender. Seems fine. Gallagher's 1 is Liverpool, so it's almost like 3 for half.
Similarly, let's say instead of buying the Leicester player on Tuesday 11th, you're like, oh my God, Gallagher's the one I need to get. He's the only one you can get rid of for whatever reason. Fine. Don't buy for Tuesday 11th. You've got Gallagher against Brighton, and you can still sell him and have Tielemans or whomever for Burnley and Tottenham before Brighton while Gallagher plays Liverpool. It's 3-for-1. Oh, probably with no captaincy. And he's still looking at me, it's 3-for-1. Like, there's still a gain on it. Now that one's a little bit more borderline, but the chances are there'll be something else that you can add and you go, oh, okay, that is a captaincy. That's got me effective 4-for-1, for example. So, yeah, I think a lot of people will end up binning Conor Gallagher probably Saturday 15th. As I said, those with 4 in midfield, Gallagher to a King or Dennis on Saturday 15th, I think it'd be pretty popular.
Yeah. Tom FPL Physio is talking about moving off Salah as well. Was originally going to go to Josh King to cover the Friday night captaincy. Don't laugh here, James. Do you think Pookie's a better... Pookie's only a better option if he's in the jar, mate. Pookie in a jar. Don't want to pay you 750 quid for that. He says, so let's go. Dennis is up to 25%, King's 8, 9, 10 or whatever he is. As we get closer, and if both are fit and available, you'd assume that Dennis is the one who's going to see a massive jump in ownership based on the current ownership stats. So does that mean Dennis by default becomes the better, safer option just because of
only
ownership?
Only if Claudio Ranieri tells me that he's definitely fit, because we're all a bit suspicious that he came off at half time at the weekend. I think I would probably go to King as differential, because most are obviously on Dennis. I think I'd go King anyway. I'd go, look, he's on the pens. He's really short term. And obviously over short term, one could outscore the other quite easily. He did play back through the middle against Tottenham with Dennis. I think I'd go King. Actually, but Timu Pukki, I would not. I wouldn't think about that for a second. Even if it meant you were going to captain him at West Ham, no chance.
No. And last but not least, our prediction logging legend, Kevin, FPL Bus Team, says, give me one player in each position that you're considering for overhaul. I'm only going to jump on this because obviously we don't know about too many fixtures, but because it's pretty straightforward. In terms of forwards, I mean, Salah's in. I don't think I want to go without Mo Salah post-overhaul.
There's no going without.
Midfield, Norgard as an enabler for me is going to sit there as well. I don't see him moving on. I mean, his price and his 5 points a game or 4 points a game allows you to get, like you said before, 10 of the other best players in the game. I do think midfield Norgard's going to be in for me.
I'd say one would be really popular. And listen, we're going to talk about after overhaul a lot. You shouldn't be thinking about it too much now anyway. All the February fixtures are announced. You can see it. We've got plenty of time to talk about after overhaul. Don't let it kind of cloud your thinking now. But give you a perfect example, what you might want to do in the next couple of weeks, a little bit of scouting on Southampton, who do play Norwich at home on Friday, the 25th of February. So you're talking about midfielders. I'm thinking, James Ward-Prowse is going to be very popular on overhaul because of that fixture. He's the obvious one, isn't he? But you might decide to go down a different route. Armando Broja is quite cheap. Perhaps Alex McCarthy might be back in goal by then. Mohamed Salisu. Livramento, of course. Mohamed Salisu at centre-back has picked up quite a bit of tackle tiers this season. Might be another alternative. So you can have that sort of thing in the back of your mind. But I think your midfielder, probably first name, because of that single game day, probably feels like James Ward-Prowse. The only single game days we've definitely got in February is that. There is another one, Sunday the 27th, which is scheduled to be Chelsea against Leicester. But obviously, if Chelsea reach the Carabao Cup final, that won't happen. And in the midweeks, 15th to 17th and 22nd to 24th, we might have other games dropping now. It's worth saying. So like Chelsea-Leicester, if it gets called off, actually can't go into that midweek because Leicester are playing in the Europa Conference League those two midweeks. But perhaps Chelsea's fixture, if it's not arranged with Brighton for the match week 22 midweek, Brighton v Chelsea is probably going to go into the week, I would say, between the 15th and the 17th. It'll almost definitely be Wednesday the 16th, arguably. Chelsea could play Arsenal that night as well, but I'm not so keen on it being Chelsea-Arsenal because TV companies probably want to show it. And although UEFA said, obviously, Premier League games can take place in the Champions League, I doubt they'd be too happy about Sky showing Chelsea versus Arsenal while BT are showing Liverpool against Inter Milan at the same time. I doubt they'd be too happy about that. So there's other single game days that could drop in there that obviously we can't see now. There's a number of them. That becomes way more unpredictable. 22, we can have a clearer idea because we know the TV companies want to do something. Those midweeks afterwards, the Champions League midweek, dead unpredictable. You might just get Watford Palace, bang, psh, Tuesday the 15th or something with not a lot of notice or something. So you have to have your fingers on the pulse, certainly.
Defenders and goalkeepers. I mean, Cancelo's almost a shoe-in, isn't he?
Cancelo, yeah, definitely. I think for me as well, like I've just sold Laporte, but he's been absolutely brilliant for me. He's kind of the one that's kept me in touching distance. He's been kind of under 10% owned in the top 1,000 all the way through. He's been absolutely brilliant value for me, Aymeric Laporte. So him potentially. Yeah.
The goalkeeper that I've got my eyes on and could be swayed if there's more single game days is Jose Sarr.
Yeah, agreed.
At 6.7, compared to the 6.5s of the Sanchez's of the world and 6.8 of Ramsdale, sits in the middle nicely. and Wolves have been getting better and better week by week. So I think Joseph Sarr, for me, covers you off. And it's a team also that I don't want any outfield players from.
No, you definitely...
I'm just not really that bothered by
You definitely feel that way
with
Wolves. Although I think, like, to be honest, Max Kilman, he's like every game, solid as. He'll get the odd 7-pointers, very occasional, obviously, past here and stuff. And he's pretty cheap. He's about 6.2, Max Kilman. It's worth saying that Wolves' first 4 fixtures after Overhaul are Arsenal, Tottenham, Leicester, West Ham. So don't walk straight into great fixtures. So if, it could be one that you look at and go, oh, well, maybe, Alex McCarthy cover that shitty Southampton, Norwich, then move it on. And there'll probably be other options like that nearer the time as well. Like I say, it might even be Watford Palace. You might think, I don't want King Dennis longer term. And Dennis is difficult maybe to get away from, maybe his formal dip. You go, Gator. Do you know what I mean? Something like that.
There we go, James. That's all of the questions that we've had in on Twitter that we haven't obviously also covered off as duplicates as well. Listeners, I hope your hunt for £50,000 is going well with Sky Fantasy Football. We know for one listener it is.
I'd tell you one really interesting goalkeeper, just very quickly, just to bring back into is Pope.
Yeah.
Because they're going to have the most fixtures to rearrange. Something's probably going to die in there as a single game day. And the games they'll have to, if the Watford game gets rearranged, the other games are Villa, Everton, Tottenham. So the sort of games you might not have coverage from the other teams as well. So keep that sort of thing in the back of your mind as well. Because similar to what you're saying with Sarr at Wolves, although I think Kilman's an alternative, Burnley would definitely be Pope or nothing, wouldn't it? So it might come back around, Nick Pope.
Good. Listeners, for you tomorrow, we've got Clash of the Correspondents, James.
Burnley, talk with the Devils. Burnley versus Leicester with Jack Toner and Aaron Lake. Good laugh, that is.
Good. And we'll be back at you with that tomorrow, a live stream on Friday with James, and then Monday, usual shenanigans with the podcast. Stay safe. Look after yourselves. If you want to support the show, head over to patreon.com/Planet FPL. And like I said, stay safe. Chap it out.
What's a shit?
Shit, I just didn't want to push Patreon. I'll be honest with you. I got to the end and I was like, I better say Patreon, but I don't really want to push it.
You've become so good at plugging it. That was fucking awful.
I feel the salesman is not in me today. But if you want to help us, patreon.com/Planet FPL.
Cue music, please, man, child.